I'll just change gears a little to the last weekend's speech at the G20 summit in Australia, where we had Obama cite that the three most dangerous threats to mankind are Ebola, ISIS, and Russia.
I would go one further and say that actually the biggest threat to mankind is actually Obama himself and those pulling the strings. Ebola is for sure a very scary and frightening phenomenon. I'm sometimes of the thoughts that these viruses that seem to plague us here and there, bird flu, swine flu, Ebola, that they're generally man-made or at least weaponized by laboratories and somehow accidentally or on purpose escaped from testing. What was your second one? ISIS again, another scary virus. I really don't understand I haven't yet understood the underlying politics of that. ISIS is definitely getting money from someone. Not only is Toyota looks like a sponsor of ISIS, driving around a brand new Toyota truck, but
who's buying the oil?
Who's buying
the weapons?
And where are the weapons coming from? And obviously the weapons are coming from the West. They're getting funneled in through the West. The West is probably buying the oil or allowing the oil to be brought. But to what end? Is this ISIS the new terrorist of this decade? Is it just another tool to impose fear in populations in the West to allow again more rights and liberties of populations to be stripped away by governments for the sole purpose of national security? Or I'm very suspicious of both Ebola and ISIS. And your third evil, Putin. I would call Putin probably the world's greatest statesman at the moment. He certainly proved on the international scene to be one of the most internationally law-abiding presidents that we have now. He has the ability to really go in and get opposing sides to sit down at the peace level, like in Ukraine, and he's definitely not. His actions are not proving to be an obstacle to peace. Rather the opposite. His work with Assad concerning these chemical weapons. I mean, if it wasn't for him, there could have been cruise missiles landing in Syria, but instead, we have a Syria now that has almost given up all of its chemical weapons, which wouldn't have been possible without Putin's part. I certainly, the demonization of Russia, it's certainly, okay, I perhaps understand why it's in the American interest to demonize Russia. Perhaps they would like Europe to buy shale gas from America rather than to buy gas from Russia. But I don't understand that Europe can feel that it's better to have a prickly relationship with its neighbor Russia than a friendly relationship. For us, for where I come from, in the south of Croatia, we have this huge market of mandarins. They grow tons and tons of mandarins, and one of the biggest markets for these mandarins is Russia. And now they're just throwing them in the trash. They can't sell them to anybody. So, and, these little micro problems caused by sanctions and this demonization of Russia, it's costing us. And it will cost us if they turn to gas. It cost us big time. All gas in Croatia comes from Russia.
So what's your view on the situation in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions of East Ukraine?
I follow the news little bit by little bit, I'm not following news now on an hour-to-hour basis, and I'm not so much diving deep into reading everything about everything. And the little I know of it and the little I understand of it is that the new Kiev government was put in place by coup d'etat, sponsored by the Americans particularly. Even I think they confessed to spending $5 billion on it.
It was Victorian,
yeah. So, you have this illegal government in power now in the capital, and the Russian population of East Ukraine, I'm sure they're terrified of losing everything, of having, especially now that there's been conflict, that even if they did put down their weapons and allow the Kiev government to take control of the region, that the retaliations would be horrific against them, and it's something natural that they want to protect themselves, their culture, their heritage, their language, from this new, what they probably see as a life-threatening, it's a threat to their way of life and a threat to their lives in general. If I was Putin, I would do anything in my power to support the East Ukrainians. I mean, they're kin, they're blood, they share the same language, the same culture, they're Russian. So, of course, he cannot allow, under any circumstances, anyone else taking these people out. And as for Crimea, Crimea succeeded, they didn't break the law. There was no laws, international laws broken by Crimea rejoining Russia. And in fact, I have a friend of a friend who lives in Crimea, and he says, of course the Crimea joined Russia. The pensions are 4 times larger under Russian rule than they were under Ukrainian rule. Wages, this friend of a friend is building a house. Now he's paying 3 times more for labor than he did when Crimea was under Ukraine. So the wages have increased, labor security has increased, social benefits are much better now under Russian rule. And the Crimeans, they knew this, and this is one of the reasons that they joined.
Well, according to...
And they went back to Russia, let's say.
Well, according to Kerry, the vote of the referendum they had was illegal and unconstitutional, although was 96.7% of the population voted in favour.
Of course. What else is he going to say? He has to support his own argument and the expense he has. I mean, Ukraine is just another example of again, this NATO expansion. NATO expands closer and closer to Russia. It's hardly surprising that Russia's going to get nervous. If I was Russia, I'd be nervous about NATO expansion as well.
For journalists, it was reported to be in Ukraine. There was 5 journalists the other day that were given a posthumous award in Russia for losing their lives or having their lives taken from them by the Ukrainian authorities in the Donetsk and Lugansk region. Although many people wouldn't know this, and why was this so? We're all very familiar, rightfully so, for the names of the people that have been beheaded in the Middle East. But why does nobody know about the names of the 5 journalists?
I mean, it's because the Western-backed murderers were the ones that killed them. If it was Western enemies that behead journalists, then of course it's front page. But if it's West's allies that are beheading or killing, murdering journalists, then of course it's suppressed. I mean, our media is no different to Russian media or Chinese media. I mean, all the medias have an agenda. They'll toe the line. And our media certainly no less propaganda than Russian media or Chinese media. In fact, if you want to know what's happening, in the West, it's better to read the media in the East. If you want to know what's happening in the East, it's better to read the media in the West.
Good way to look at it. But just finally, I know we talked about it. If you have been speaking of the G20 summit, which three dangerous threats would you highlight?
I think the first would be the banking cartels in cahoots with the military-industrial complex. Perhaps I would highlight also the global warming and certainly the need to pull the majority of the world out of poverty. Water would be a subject as well, I think. But it certainly wouldn't be the three that were labelled by Obama, that's for sure.
Well, on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.